Federalist Paper number 1, the first in a series of papers arguing for federalism and trying to persuade the legislature and the people of New York to vote in favor of the Constitution. This was written by Alexander Hamilton, and he was one of 3 people that wrote the Federalist Papers under the pseudonym, under the anonymous name, Publius. Just a quick overview. The Federalist Papers were written to argue for federalism. They showed the dangers of not having a strong central government, and they were in reply to the Southerners who wanted a loose connection. At the time of the Federalist Papers, the country was controlled by the Articles of Confederation, but these weren't working very well. It made it difficult to have an army for defense, it made it difficult to trade between the states, and it made it difficult to make money because every one of those 13 colonies was independent. So this was leading up to the Constitutional Convention, the signing, the ratification of the Constitution that was made at the Constitutional Convention. And the 3 main authors of the Federalist Papers were James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. In this video, I'm going to read the letter with you, look at some of the key vocabulary, and try to summarize the main idea of each paragraph. After full experience of the insufficiency means there's something that's not enough, of the existing federal government, you are invited to deliberate, to discuss upon a new constitution for the United States of America. So the existing government is being controlled by the Articles of Confederation, and it says this is not sufficient, this is not enough. The subject speaks of its own importance, comprehending in its consequences nothing less than the existence of the Union. So the outcome of this will determine whether the Union can exist or not. That's why this is very, very important. Also, the safety and welfare of the parts of which it is composed. Composed means to be made from. The fate of an empire, in many respects, the most interesting in the world. So this could determine the fate of America, and it will also have a bearing on England as well. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country to decide, by their conduct and example, the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government. So it says it has been left to the people of America to decide how America will govern itself. And the question is, can people really determine what is a good government or not? Or whether they will forever be destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. Can people use reason and logic to decide what is best for their country, or will they have to depend on force? If there be any truth in the remark, the crisis at which we are arrived may, with propriety, be regarded as the period when that decision is to be made, and a wrong election of the part we shall act may, in this view, deserve to be considered as the general misfortune of mankind. If they fail to take their opportunity, this will not only be bad for America, but for the whole of mankind, for the whole of the human race. This is a very special chance for the people to show that they can make their own government. This idea, by adding the inducements, the motivations or the persuasions of philanthropy, which means giving of money freely to charity, to those of patriotism, which means loving your country, will heighten the solicitude which all considerate and good men must feel for the event. Happy will it be if our choice should be directed by judicious estimate of our true interests, uninfluenced by considerations foreign to the public good. So it will be best if the decision is made for the best way for America, not based on anything that is against the public good. By this is more ardently to be wished for, forcefully to be wished for, than seriously to be expected. The plan offered to our deliberations, to our discussion, affects too many particular interests, innovates upon too many local institutions, not to involve in its discussion a variety of objects extraneous to its merits, so outside of whether it is good or not, and of views, passions, and prejudices little favourable to the discovery of truth. It's saying because this is going way beyond what is good for the country, because it has so many different aspects. So they're talking about local government, judges, president, they're talking about powers over military, over taxation, because there are so many different parts involved. It is unlikely that people can do it fairly because there will be many passionate people, many prejudices, and these will be limiting the possibility that they can find the truth of what is the best for America. Among the most formidable, the most difficult of the obstacles which the new constitution will have to encounter may readily be distinguished the obvious interest of a certain class of men in every state to resist all changes which may hazard a diminution of the power, emolument, and consequence of the offices they hold under the state establishment. So this is the political men in each state. Those who are leaders in each state will be an obstacle to the formation of a constitution. Because if the constitution is a hazard or a danger and might cause a reducing or a weakening of their power, emolument. Emolument means what they're getting back, and consequence of the offices they hold. So this first part is basically saying one of the biggest obstacles will be those political leaders in each state that might be afraid to lose some power. And the perverted, that means the wrong way, ambition of another class of men who will either hope to aggrandize, to make themselves big by the confusions of their country, or will flatter themselves with fairer prospects of elevation from the subdivision of the empire into several partial confederacies than from its union under one government. So there are some men that have an ambition to become great. They might think they have more chance to get a higher position if the union is divided into lots of small confederacies. So we have two dangers. The first danger is from the political men who are already in office, who will be afraid to lose some of their power. The second danger is from then men who later want to get power and are afraid that if the country is joined together into one, then they may have less chance to become great or to become powerful. It is not, however, my design to dwell upon observations of this nature, so it's not my plan to focus on this. I am aware that it would be disingenuous to resolve indiscriminately the opposition of any set of men into interested or ambitious views. So it would not be right to say everybody that is against the Constitution is either ambitious or self-centered, merely because their situations might subject them to suspicion. Candor, honesty, honesty will oblige, will force us to admit that even such men may be actuated by upright intentions. Even these men might actually have a good aim. And it cannot be doubted that much of the opposition, which has already shown itself, or that may hereafter make its appearance, will spring from sources blameless at least, if not respectable. He's saying, to be honest, many people who will be against this might have a good reason to be against this. Even if I don't agree with them, even if I don't respect them, they are blameless. Their motive is pure. But the honest errors of minds led astray by preconceived jealousies and fears. So he says this is because they are honest, but they are led astray by their bias, by their jealousy, by their fear. So numerous indeed and so powerful are the causes which serve to give a false bias to the judgment, that we, upon many occasions, see wise and good men on the wrong as well as on the right side of questions. He's saying because there are so many things that can lead people to the wrong conclusion, honest, good men may be on either side. This circumstance, if duly attended to, would always furnish a lesson, would always give a lesson of moderation, of being limited to those who are engaged in controversy, debate, however well persuaded of being in the right. So he says, if we understand this, then we must be careful about how we argue, because we must recognize that others may be good, but just in error. And a further reason for caution in this respect might be drawn from the reflection that we are not always sure that those who advocate the truth, argue for the truth, are actuated by purer principles than their antagonists, are motivated by purer principles, purer motives than their antagonists, those that they argue against. Ambition, avarice, personal animosity, party opposition, and many other motives, not more laudable than these, not more praiseworthy than these, are apt to operate as well upon those who support as upon those who oppose the right side of a question. Everybody can be affected by these motives. Were there not even these inducements to moderation, nothing could be more ill-judged than that intolerant spirit, not accepting others, which has at all times characterized political parties. So political parties are exclusive. They do not want to see the other point of view. They always think they are right and the others are wrong. For in politics as in religion, it is equally absurd to aim at making proselytes by fire and sword. Proselytes means followers. By fire and sword means physically forcing people to follow you. Heresies in either can rarely be cured by persecution. Wrong ideas in either politics or religion cannot be changed by persecuting people. And yet, just as these sentiments must appear to candid men, to honest men, we have already sufficient indications, enough indications, that it will happen in this as in all former cases of great national discussion. So even though we don't want to do this, we are sure that this will happen because this always happens. A torrent, a flow of angry and malignant passions will be let loose. To judge from the conduct of the opposite parties, we shall be led to conclude that they will mutually hope to evince the justness of their opinions and to increase the number of converts by the loudness of their declamations and by the bitterness of their invectives. So people are going to get angry, and when they look at the other side, people are going to try and persuade by being louder and by being bitter, by being angry, by pointing out the weaknesses in the other side. An enlightened zeal for the energy and efficiency of government will be stigmatized as the offspring of a temper fond of power. So those that are really passionate about a good government will be characterized or described as people that want to have power and are hostile to the principles of liberty. So he's talking about how the anti-federalists will describe the federalists. He says the anti-federalists, the Southerners, will describe those that want effective government to be hungry for power and against individual liberty. An over-scrupulous jealousy of danger to the rights of the people, which is more commonly the fault of the head than of the heart, will be represented as mere pretense and artifice. The stale bait for popularity at the expense of public good. So he says, those who are really wanting to protect people's rights will be shown to be pretending, not really trying to protect people's rights. It will be forgotten on the one hand that jealousy is the usual concomitant of violent love, so it goes together with violent love, and that the noble enthusiasm of liberty is too apt to be infected with a spirit of narrow and illiberal distrust. So liberty should mean that you accept people that have different views to you. Jealousy, where you cannot see the good in the other side, is normally violent. On the other hand, it will be equally forgotten that the vigour of government is essential to the security of liberty. It will be forgotten that energetic government is very important to securing liberty. That in the contemplation of a sound and well-informed judgment, their interests can never be separated, and that a dangerous ambition more often lurks behind the suspicious mask of zeal for the rights of the people than under the forbidding appearances of zeal for the firmness and efficiency of government. So you say, actually, it's more dangerous when people are pretending, it's more dangerous when people are pretending to be enthusiastic about people's rights than when people are enthusiastic about firm government. History will show us that the former has been found a much more certain road to the introduction of despotism. Those that care about the rights of the people instead of the strong government lead to dictatorship. And the latter, that those of men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people. So those that become dictators often start by showing people that they are on their side. And then when they get power, they try and become dictator. They try and abuse their power. In the course of the previous observations, comments, it has been my aim, fellow citizens, to put you upon your guard against all attempts, from whatever quarter, from whatever side, to influence your decision in a matter of the utmost moment to your welfare. So I want to warn you so that you are prepared, so that you can make your decision carefully, because this decision is very important for your welfare. And I want you to only think about what comes from the evidence of the truth. You will, no doubt, at the same time, have collected from the general scope of them that they proceed from a source not unfriendly to the new constitution. Not unfriendly means supportive of the new constitution. Yes, my countrymen, I own to you that after having given it an attentive consideration, careful thought, I am clearly of opinion it is your interest to adopt it, to agree to it. I am convinced that this is the safest course for your liberty, your dignity, and your happiness. I affect not reserves which I do not feel. I will not amuse you with an appearance of deliberation, thinking, when I have decided. So I will not lie to you. I will not tell you I'm thinking about it when I have already decided. I frankly, openly acknowledge to you my convictions, my beliefs, and I will freely lay before you the reasons on which they are founded. The consciousness of good intentions disdains ambiguity. So if I want to be honest, I should not be ambiguous. I should be very clear. I shall not, however, multiply professions on this head. My motives must remain in the depository of my own breast. So my motives, the reasons, will stay in my own heart. My arguments will be open to all and may be judged by all. This shall at least be offered in a spirit which will not disgrace the cause of truth. So even though I will not tell you my motives, I will tell you the arguments that I have so that everybody can judge for themselves. I suggest in a series of papers to discuss the following interesting particulars. The utility of the Union to your political prosperity. How the Union is useful for political growth. The insufficiency of the present Confederation to preserve that Union. So the Articles of Confederation are not enough for the Union. The necessity of a government at least equally energetic with the one proposed to the attainment of this object. The need for a government with the power and the energy proposed by the Constitution. The conformity of the proposed Constitution to the true principles of republican government. Republican government means representative government, and this is a really representative government. Its analogy to your own state constitution. the similarity to the state constitution, and the additional security which its adoption will afford to the preservation of that species of government, to liberty and to property. In the progress of this discussion, I shall try to give a satisfactory answer to all the objections that shall have made their appearance, that may seem to have any claim to attention. It may perhaps be thought superfluous, not needed, to offer arguments to prove the utility, the usefulness of the Union, a point no doubt deeply engraved in the hearts of the great body of the people in every state, and one which it may be imagined has no adversaries. So most people will agree that a union is useful. But the fact is that we already hear it whispered in the private circles of those who oppose the new constitution, that the 13 states are of too great extent for any general system. The 13 states are too big for any union for any general system, and that we must of necessity resort to separate confederacies of distinct portions of the whole. Because they are so big, they must separate into 13 countries. This doctrine will, in all probability, be gradually proposed, till it has votaries enough to countenance its own avowal, to agree with itself. For nothing can be more evident to those who are able to take an enlarged view of the subject than the alternative of an adoption of the Constitution or dismemberment of the Union. It may therefore be essential to examine particularly the advantages of the Union. We need to think why the Union is advantageous. The certain evils and dangers to which every state will be exposed from its dissolution. This shall be done accordingly. Publius, which is a secret name for Alexander Hamilton. Now, I've gone through this video quite quickly, but I've also put notes down the side of every paragraph. So you can see what the key vocabulary means, and you can see my summary of each section of each paragraph. So I think you should probably watch this video a couple of times to try and get an understanding of what this passage is about. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you questions for this passage. So it's important that you have a good understanding of this passage before you go to tomorrow's questions.